welcome to the Sober Spotlight. I'm your host, Kate Vitela. I'm here with Sober Curator Alysse Bryson. And guess what, folks? We have some awesome guests here today. We have Rebekka and Anne from the Non-Drinking Buddies podcast. They are here with us today to talk about all things sobriety and share with us some of their awesome humor. We're so excited to have you guys here.
Thank you for having us.
We are so excited to be here with you. Thank you.
You know, I was listening to your episodes in the bathtub this weekend. My gas furnace quit on the coldest weekend in Seattle. It was actually, I think, colder inside the house than it was outside. So I just decided I was going to sit in a hot bath the entire weekend until it came back on. And so I listened to your 3 episodes and basically, you guys talked to Dr. Drew, and now I'm talking to you, which basically means I've basically talked to Dr. Drew at this point. So that's a thrill. As someone who watched every episode of Celebrity Rehab, OMG.
When I was younger, I used to listen to him on the radio on Loveline when I was, a teenager. He's been in my orbit for many, many years. So it was very exciting to talk to him and ask him questions about alcoholism and the effect of alcohol on your body. Mm-hmm. Interesting information we got there.
Absolutely. And side note, a little Easter egg, is that the word for the listeners? His wife was cooking him chicken, and he is a very fit man, we could feel his fitness on the other end of the Zoom.
I don't know if that's an Easter egg, but sure.
Well, but speaking of his fitness, did you all see him on that reality show called Special Forces, where you train to be like a Navy SEAL type situation, but they do it with celebrities? So I'm talking Britney Spears' sister, Black China, Dr. Drew, who else was on? I don't know. A bunch of people compete. Dr. Drew did not make it very far, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't. So maybe that's yeah.
I wouldn't have
made it either, to be clear.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
And I was on a show where I had to wrestle, and I barely made it through that.
Okay, so that's a good segue. We want to hear a little bit about your background prior to this magical date that you both coincidentally got sober. I still need to hear that story in more detail too. But let's hear a little bit of your professional backgrounds, and then, what led up to the putting the plug in the jug.
So I started doing improv comedy in college. And in fact, my improv group had shirts that said, "We're not a frat, we just drink like one." So my drinking career and my comedy career were very connected from early on. And so I did improv comedy, sketch comedy, and then eventually I was lucky enough to get cast on the show Glow on Netflix and become a wrestler. And I did that. We did 4 seasons. We were canceled in the middle of the 4th season in the beginning of the pandemic, but I got to really work every day on that TV show. That was amazing. And in addition to that, I write and direct, and ended up going to, always out, especially when I lived in New York City before I moved to LA. I was constantly out till bars till 4 a.m., doing comedy, then going out after, drinking before comedy shows, during and after comedy shows, and then maintained that lifestyle out in LA. I worked at a cocktail bar. I made content for a wine magazine. I produced and directed a show called Speakeasy with Paul F. Tompkins, where it was an interview over a mocktail that I curated. So my whole life.
A cocktail or a mocktail? Sorry.
A cocktail. Did I say mocktail? Cocktail.
More booze.
So everything was
more cock.
Yeah, more cock, less tail. So I did all that, and Anne and I started hanging out about a little before a year ago, and we started deciding to make comedy together on stage. And we would drink all the time when we hung out, but we can tell the how we quit story, but we basically quit on the same day. And a week later, she was like, "Let's start a podcast." And I was like, "I think I need to be more comfortable in my sobriety before I do start a podcast." A week in. So we waited about a year, and then we started it. But that's kind of my personal history. Anne?
Yes. Okay. So I also was in comedy, but I came to LA right away. I went to school in California, and once you're in California and you're in this industry, you kind of stay because this is where the most jobs are. So I started improv, stand up, which is like improv for more miserable people. So even more drinking there, but alone. And then I would do sketch comedy and same. And then I started, I always fancied myself a writer. And I did eventually write on shows, TV shows. But I started getting jobs acting on shows. So I was on a show called Punked. And I punked like, Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber was on there. A lot of like singers in the, the 2010 era. And
you can see her naked on Punked, people.
Yes, please. I mean, that's what's going to drive people to this is if they can see me naked. Thanks, Rebekka. But I would drink before punking people. Like it was that insane. And then I had kids, and I had kids like a year before you, Rebekka. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I only had one kid then. It wasn't kids. I didn't have twins at that point. But I started drinking more after I had children, which is just honestly a little sad, but the truth. I wasn't doing live comedy anymore. I was writing on TV shows. My hours were long. It was stressful in general. I was the token woman in the room and feeling guilty about being a mom, feeling guilty about not being a writer. Trigger warning, also around this time, I started dealing with some childhood trauma, which led me to healthfully drink even more. So for why I quit was for my health reasons. I also was drinking. I was that wine mom thing where it started with a nightly glass. It was like nightly, which I thought was normal. And that's really not, it's not normal to drink every night. And my wine glass got bigger and bigger and bigger until I was basically just justifying drinking a bottle or two of wine a night. So in order to cope with just stress and sadness and dulling my emotions, I think that really was like, while Rebekka was the party drunk, I was like the dulling my sad feelings drunk.
And I was like, I love to drink and I drank a lot all the time. And so I really realized that I'm an alcoholic. And so for Anne, it was like health reasons. Also, obviously she was doing it emotionally, but she was getting migraines. And for me, I was like, oh, this has to stop because I was blacking out all the time. And like, being a mom as well, never getting to hang out with my friends. And then when I hung out with them, I didn't remember the next day. Or being like, what happened at that wedding that I went to yesterday? Or like, I got nominated for an award. I was at this big award show and I have no memory of talking to all the celebrities that I'm in pictures with. So, just that kind of stuff led me deciding that I had to quit.
And we, our kids go to the same elementary school. And I knew Rebekka from UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade, where we were on teams at different times, but we knew each other. She was in the Apple Sisters. She was always funny. And I always liked her comedy. And we started just taking walks together. We would either
after we dropped our kids off,
after our kid drop off, or we would go and drink before we would pick them up. So one was like super healthy. The other was like absolutely not healthy. And then I started reading her scripts. She started reading my scripts. We liked each other's stuff. Then we were like, we want to perform again. Like our kids are old enough. Let's just do a monthly show. And it was called The Retreat. And we started doing that and it was super fun. But then we both decided separately to stop drinking. And drinking was such a connective tissue, like a core value to our friendship, that we were almost ashamed to tell each other that we weren't drinking anymore. So I think did we text each other first, Rebekka? Like about the news?
Yeah, I was like, something crazy happened. I quit drinking. And Anne was like, me too. And I was like, when? And she said December 3rd. And I said, me too. And this is a week later. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, that's so weird. Especially because it wasn't like we were together the last night we drank. It just, we both came to it without discussing it much beforehand. We both came to it and it was so, what a like godsend really to have someone to be in this situation with, like that we both quit, we both gave it up. We had our different reasons and different sort of relationship with alcohol, but we had each other and we could sort of navigate this new phase in life, this, phase for the rest of our lives with each other. And we even got to do our show. We did the retreat in Scotland for a month, and it was great to be together, not drinking, not just having
the capital of the world,
not being with drinking people. Yeah. With whiskey tasting rooms every corner and being like, no, we're not going to do that. And
she told me that.
Yeah. So that's kind of our story. And then
I almost went into a whiskey tasting room, by the way. I just have to say that. At one point we were having we got this like really mean, we had really good reviews. And then we had this just one misogynistic fuck who was so mean to us.
Nasty review for our show.
Reviewer, and I was like, you know what? I can go to a whiskey tasting. Rebekka's like, you could, but why would you want to do that? And I didn't end up drinking. But
I was like, I don't think it'll make you feel better.
And I'm like, yeah. You're right. It would make me feel like shit.
I was like, you can, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I was like, you might be able to like do it, moderate, but I certainly cannot moderate. And I don't think it'll make any of us feel better if we do it. So, and she did, then she didn't.
I didn't. And having her as my sober buddy, is the reason I haven't been drinking. Like, I think it was like our own small AA group, where we could check in with each other and talk about alternatives that could be fun. And, she makes me work out, which is good for me. She helps me in that way. So having Rebekka and her sense of humor and honesty has just been amazing. Such a gift.
I love that. And I think the power of the story there that we hear over and over and over again is that the opposite of addiction is connection. And in this case, Rebekka, you're the one that is identifying as an alcoholic and Anne is quit for health reasons. I love the fact that you represent two different groups within the non-drinking community as a whole. Because, you haven't been here as long as Kate and I have been here, but we're here to tell you inside this whole non-drinking community is a lot of different cliques. Mm-hmm. And they don't always play well together in the sandbox, I am finding. And I identify as an old timer. I've got going on 18 years, one day at a time.
Amazing.
And Kate's coming right behind me with, are you at 5 or 6?
6 years next month.
6.
Wow.
We're almost to 6.
Congratulations.
So it's back in my day when I got sober, the class of 2006, there were no sober Instagram, no sober Facebook, no sober Twitter. There were podcasts, but they were just getting started. The self-help section at Barnes and Noble was really small, and I didn't find anything there that I identified with, which is kind of sad given the fact I'm like a white woman. Like, I should have been easy, right? It should have been easy for me, and there still wasn't anything there for me. So I have seen over the course of the last 18 years, this explosion of content come online. Mm-hmm. And prior to launching the Sober Curator in 2020, I did not recover out loud on the internet. I only did it if I met you in person and it came up in an organic or natural way that I thought would somehow be helpful to you or maybe to me, because stop trying to hand me vodka. So it's a big decision to come out on the internet. Kate, do you want to chime in a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned nothing being available 18, 20, 100 million years ago when you got sober, because I feel
didn't say 100 million. Like, I didn't.
In the 1800s, when you got sober.
In your buggy days.
Yeah. When I was 9 years old. No.
And drinking. Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Even 5 years ago, there wasn't anything. Right? Like this whole concept of sober Instagram and sober out loud, and either there wasn't anything or I was just like, buried in some church basement. But honestly, I really feel like this exploded just in the last few years. I decided to come out. And I always feel like coming out sounds like something else. I was going to come out and say something else, but I came out sober about 2 years in. So that was, I don't know, 4-ish years ago. And there was only a few people that were doing it. And so it just feels very new, this concept of recovering out loud. And there's so many groups and books and podcasts and resources, and it's unbelievable. It's like, it's almost getting kind of cool.
I think so. And I honestly, it is why I came to the decision, is because of reading things like the Sober Curator, following the different TikTok people who are sober curious, sober influencers. I read This Naked Mind based on a recommendation from someone on TikTok that I was following. I mean, that is why I got sober, is because I was influenced. And the thing with the algorithm on like TikTok is that it finds you, and you're staying on something longer and longer. And I noticed how often I was just watching this stuff, and, and then I started seeking it out, and I would hear things that connected to me about like, regretting the night before, or having anxiety about not remembering, or, all that stuff. And so having people speak about it is literally, I feel like it likely saved my life. And, so it's just so amazing. And it's, we're in the public eye, like being an actor, it's vulnerable, and it's a little nerve-wracking to admit that you have an addiction problem when you're an actor, because you don't want to be like a liability. But at the same time, I was so helped by people doing that. And Anne and I are comedians. And one of the big things I realized is I could be funny when I'm not drinking. Like, I'm funny with my friends during the day when they're sober. Like,
That's
even while I was a drinking person. And it really influenced me to be like, okay. And I have one of our really good friends, Kate Nash, who I was on Glow with. She's also sober. And I had so many laughs with her. And I was like, okay, so we're funny, and I'm a funny human being without it. So I think I could maintain my humor. And now we're sort of proving that and doing it live on our podcast.
1,000,000%. And like the one thing you talked about, Kate Nash, we just interviewed Kate Nash. And she's lovely, but I was like, yeah, I feel kind of boring sometimes, because if I'm at a party and I'm not vibing, after not drinking, I just get out of there. Like, I'll say hi, give the host gift, and then I'm like, peace out. And I don't know if you guys really do that. And she was like, me too. And it's because you don't like boring people anymore. And I'm like, to be mean. But like, I think your boundaries become so much stronger when you're giving up this thing that made you like stuff that you normally wouldn't like in a normal state of mind. Do you know what I mean? So that's
Absolutely.
that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's we talk about that a lot. I do a lot of coaching with people one-on-one, and I say things to them in that vibe of like, you're going to quit doing things that you had to drink to endure. Like, I don't like to go camping. The only time I went camping is when I was like annihilated by the fire, right? So as a sober woman, my ass isn't going camping. That's just the way it is.
You're like, get me a hotel, baby.
You're going
exactly
4 seasons. Yeah.
Well, my question for you guys is, being creatives and being in the spotlight, and I'm so glad you brought up, like, I'm still funny sober, is were you, because that's very clear here, were you afraid that sobriety would impact your creativity, or not getting drunk would impact your work in a lot of ways?
I felt like I didn't need to drink to be funny, but I was more worried about it socially.
Me too.
Because I was still professional, in terms of like when I was writing my scripts, I wasn't really drinking. There were certain comedy shows that we would start drinking at 4 and be writing. But, I was able to compartmentalize, but it was more like the social events. It's going to these networking things, Hollywood parties. And like the first thing I would do is go to the bar. You go to like an EW party or something, and the first thing you're doing is like, okay, where's the bar? Okay, let me grab my drink. And then now I can deal with all these like celebrities.
But I found that
I'm shaking my head like I've ever been to a Hollywood party.
You come with us, baby.
It's more awkward. I think Rebekka is She is generally more social, and I'm more of like that writer brain who's funny one-on-one, but not as fun in person. I mean, like,
Come on.
I'm fun, but you know what I'm saying, Rebekka? Like, I'm kind of like an 85-year-old.
You're a snooze.
Well, I'm a snooze.
She's
You're
a
gonna
square.
fucking fall asleep anytime you talk to me. So I was drinking because I was so terrified of socializing. Like, I'm just not as much of a social butterfly as Rebekka. And now I realize
She's a social moth.
I'm a social moth. I eat people's sweaters and hide in their closet. And so, yeah, that's accurate. I don't need to drink. I just find my people, and I'm just less good at pretending I like people whom I just am not vibing with. That's probably the number one thing. Rebekka's still friendly to all. I'm like, I'm nice enough, but then I'll go to the person. Now I'm worried that people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, "That she was short with me. She hates me." But I mean, maybe.
I think professionally, though, Anne and I have written more and done more. We've been more prolific since we quit in a way that is sort of miraculous to me, because we were both hardworking before, like being working moms, and then also like writing scripts and auditioning and pitching and, doing 150 things. But like, since we quit, the fact that the next morning I don't have to take care of a hangover means I can do something the next morning. And that it's so funny. Like, to me, I'm like, oh my God, like anybody who didn't do that must have been like, oh, I have so many more hours in the day. But Anne and I have written so much, we've done so much, and I feel sharper. In fact, even performing on stage without drinking, I'm a much better performer. Wish I would have known that
100%
for 20 years.
Yeah, I'm also looser, Rebekka. Like, for some reason I thought that alcohol loosened me up, and actually having a quicker brain makes you looser and more relaxed, and you don't have that.
It just made us dumber.
Yeah, and I'm already dumb. I'm already dumb enough. Like, I don't need the booze to make me.
Same.
Well, okay, that's a good transition to the next question I want to ask. It's about being dumb. So, how I would love to hear a story of someone who's come up to you that they've been dumb because they just really made it a big deal about you not drinking at an event. I'll go first.
Great.
I was at a sales celebration dinner at a company I no longer work for, but I won't name them just because I won't. But so we're celebrating the fact that we just hit all of our goals. Yay, us. And most of the people on this team were drinkers. Like, out of the 10 of them, I think I was the only non-drinker. So I knew what I was getting into, right? And so when it came time, the waiter came around and I saw they had an alcohol-free menu. I was thrilled. I was able to get a nice drink in a pretty glass. Yay me. It was so nice to feel included, until I wasn't. So when they went in for the cheers, the first of many, we went to go cheers, and the table was long, so we couldn't all cheers at the same time. So I cheers to my left and I go to cheers to my right, and the guy like moves his glass and I totally miss. Like, I miss, and I'm like, God, I'm an idiot. So then the next time, 3 minutes later, they're, cheersing again, because a bunch of dudes really happy about themselves. So we go in for the cheers again. I cheers to the right. I go to cheers. He moves his glass again. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Do we have a problem? What is going on? And he was like, oh, you don't have alcohol in your glass. I can't cheers with you. I don't want bad luck. And I was like, I'm the black cat at the table? What is happening right now? So, like, have you...
That's crazy. Like, did like Anheuser-Busch come up with that? Like, you're gonna have bad luck if you don't cheers alcohol. Like, it's not a real thing. That's insane.
No, right. So I'm just curious, in your year plus of not drinking, if you've run into any situations where people out there in the public, they just don't know what to do. Sometimes because it says more about them, let's be clear, but other times they are just like awkward. They just don't know what to do. Like, oh, is it okay if I drink in front of you? And it's like, okay, your glass is not going to jump down my throat. Like, I think we're going to be all right here.
The
Oh, do you have one, Anne? You go.
Oh yeah, most people have been like really nice. Not at first. They're like, "Oh, you're not drinking right now." Like they thought it was because I quit. We quit in December, so it kind of coincided with dry January, and then people give you kind of a pass in dry January. But then people would get a little awkward. I mostly experienced the awkward thing, like, is it okay if I drink in front of you? Is that going to be triggering for you? And I'm like, oh, completely drink. And like, if you want to drink in front of me, just do your thing. But that has been a thing, especially since putting the podcast out. Rebekka, have you gotten that? Since the podcast came out, I've gotten that a few times where people are like, oh, should I not drink in front of you? Or like, they don't want to tell you the truth. Which I think what you're saying is it does go to their own shame about it. If somebody isn't just being like, I'm having a beer, who gives a shit? That's if they're actually hiding it from you, maybe they have something that's going on with their own, they're judging themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like people have been pretty supportive. I feel like in general, I haven't, since it's only been a year, I haven't been to too many events where I'm like talking to strangers about it or like interacting in that way. But I did have an incident. It's not even a real incident, but it's a little thing that made me feel discomfort inside. Was I was drinking like fake wine, like 0 proof wine, and it looked just like regular wine. So I put my glass down, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, is this my glass? And then a friend of a friend was like, what would happen if you had like a sip? Like said it like very tossing that off. And I was like, well, it wouldn't be good. Like all like awkward and like they knew I would quit. And like usually when you quit for a year, like you got something going on. And I was like, yeah, it wouldn't be good. And my friend was like, yeah, no, she doesn't want to have a sip. And I was like, yeah, I need to really make sure that my glass is the correct, like I don't, like it was just such an awkward thing of like, oh, why are you downplaying this? And then like kind of making me feel bad about being hyper vigilant about like, yeah. I really do not want to have a sip of alcohol. That will like really fuck me up in my brain. And they're like, well, maybe you'd get really drunk. And I'm like, yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, it was just that like uncomfortable feeling. And then I start to feel like a weirdo in the room. Cause even though then it was my friends, then it becomes talking to me about my sobriety and them justifying why they still drink or that they cut back, all while they're pouring themselves more wine. And it's like, it's fine. Drink around me. I don't care. I don't need to be the center of attention about it. It makes me feel like I stick out in a bad way. And then, yeah, that was just like one thing, but generally everyone's really supportive. And I think part of it is being, in my 40s, it's like people are like, oh, good for you. Like, I wish I could quit.
Yeah.
I
also live in LA, which, it's kind of, there's like, now, like, isn't there a whole bar that opened that's like a mocktail lounge, Rebekka, that just people have been?
Yes, and I just went to Soft Spirits yesterday. I went to like a place with no alcohol and bought like some mocktail stuff.
And I own a theater cafe with my husband, and we've got tons of NA beverages here. So it's like, for me going out, I'll get an NA beverage. And I know that even in the sober community, like you were saying, there were different factions. Some people are not cool with NA beers, but I am personally. It's not triggering for me. And that actually helps me when I'm out at a comedy show to maybe have like an athletic or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the peer pressure part of it is the weirdest thing to me. Cause like I have a really good friend and she's deathly allergic to onions. And do you think I would be like, hey, this is a special celebration, so could you just have a little onion tonight? Cause it's a special celebration. Yeah. Like, no, you would never do that, No.
I only cheers onion rings. I don't cheers zucchini sticks.
Raw onion. Weird.
I'm also curious what your last drinks were. What was the last thing you drank? Assuming you remember.
I do remember because I had like margaritas, and I went out with it was my husband and I went out with another couple. They're like some of our closest friends, but it's been a really long time since we got to hang out because everybody's been busy. And we went out, and I know I had 4 drinks, and I had 4 margaritas, and I literally didn't remember the end of the night. So that was December 2nd, 2022. And I woke up and I was like, I'm hungover. I have a crazy headache. I can't remember hanging out with my friends. My husband told me I said some stuff that made me seem weird. He wasn't saying it in a mean way. He was kind of like giving me a heads up that I was like repeating myself and misunderstood something they said. Don't remember any of it. And I was like, that's it. I quit. And I was in the middle of reading This Naked Mind at the time. So I was already on the track. But yeah, 4 margaritas. And I loved margaritas, but I can make, some lime orange seltzer and call it a day.
And
What about you, Anne?
mine was the white trash version of that. I had Kirkland tequila at home alone.
Oh, yeah.
And got a migraine. So mine's the sad version of Rebekka's thing. And I got like a 72-hour migraine. And I think I had probably 2 drinks worth of Kirkland tequila. And I was like, praying to the toilet. I lost it was one of those things where I had nothing left in my body. I was like, do I have to go to the hospital? It was so bad. And I'm like, why am I doing this? It was supposed to be stress relief. Now my kids, I'm, it's like that barfing thing. And then I would like make lunch for them and then barf. Like, you're a mom, so you can't really stay in bed all day. But you're a bad mom. Like, I was not being a good mom then. And then I was like, this is just not a thing I can do anymore in my life. And I was like, and
they were at the age, our kids could tell we were hungover. Like, my son knew what that meant because he's now 9. He was 8. Yeah. And that's not fun. I don't like that. Like him knowing mom's hungover, so that's why she's in bed and can't, or I'd be hungover at all his soccer games. That sucks.
Yeah. My last drink, my son was 9. Yeah.
Sorry,
your son was 9?
My son was 9 when I quit drinking. And my last drink, also sad. I'm not trying to compete, but I would say it's on the Costco level, right? It's on the Costco level. This episode is not brought to you by Costco and probably never will be at this point.
Now, I agree with it.
I had woken up from blacking out, and I was looking throughout the whole house trying to find anything to drink. And the only thing that was left was on the coffee room table. It was a half empty bottle of wine that was warm, that should have been cold, but it was filled with gumballs. My son had been putting gumballs in it the night before to try to get me to stop drinking.
Oof.
Wow.
And I drank it in front of him while he was watching SpongeBob. Like, sad, right?
Yeah.
Sad.
Wow.
Like, that's sad. So that's where some of us get. Not everybody has to get there, but like some of us get there. Kate, do you remember yours?
Well, I'm definitely going to one up all of you because that's what I do. But I'm pretty sure it was a boxed wine of some sort. It was unremarkable, really. It was just completely unremarkable, trashy. But much like Rebekka said, I was shifting toward that mindset anyways. And so that last drink was like, you know what? At this point in my life, I'm miserable drinking and I think I'll be miserable not drinking. So I might as well just stop because my life is pure shit. Like, I burned it to the ground. Right. And so, I mean, I had kind of a low bottom. And by the time I quit drinking, I don't think people around me were like tiptoeing. I think they were like, thank God, dear Lord. Like, it's about time, but so much of that response, like you guys said, is about the other person, is about, I love that the first thing people say to me when I say I'm not drinking is they go on and on and on about how much they don't drink. I haven't drank since, and they're getting another drink. It always makes me laugh, but I get it. I totally freaking get it. Cause I was there.
I was that person.
Well, we all
100%.
did that. All did that. Yeah. And the thing, I was reading another like tool that helped me that I was reading before that was Quit Like a Woman helped me a lot. And then I just had the voice in the back of my head for years, probably for 10 years, honestly, that was like, you should probably quit. This isn't serving your life. And then it just got louder and louder and louder. So yeah, that was like my TikTok was an internal TikTok that was telling me to stop.
How have you talked to your kids about it?
I tell my son that alcohol is an addictive substance, and for some people, it affects them where it's not good for them anymore. And I gave it up because my husband will still drink sometimes and he's fine. He's not like, he doesn't have a problem with it. We can give it or we can take it or leave it. And so kind of explaining that discrepancy, I guess, between us. But I was like, yeah, it didn't make me feel good. And I felt like I wanted it all the time. And I kind of connected to, he wants to play video games all the time. And I sort of connected to that because, you know, they make video games addictive on purpose to get them to like play longer on the ones you have to pay for. And so I connected it to that. But I just tried to be honest because, you know, he was aware of my issue. And so he knows I don't drink anymore. And that it's not easy for me. But yeah, I was just pretty honest about it.
Yeah. And same with me. I was really honest and I was like, I was like, it is addictive, like you said, but then I was like, it really wasn't good for my health. Remember when I would throw up? And they were like, yes. I mean, it affected them. Kids know, you know?
Yeah, they do.
So, I mean, I was out. Like, I likened my drinking and then feeling like shit to like, a not good for you self-care. It was like a way where I had to just stay in bed and rest. And it's like, oh, I can just do that without feeling like shit. I could just maybe take a nap. That's some self-care that I could do. That's not like mommy's out for the count for like 72 hours. I could just rest. And that has been a good thing for my kids to hear that like, yeah, it wasn't good for me.
Yeah. They say more is caught than taught when it comes to kiddos. So even the little ones, they know.
Yeah.
They know. So I have a question for you guys. And I know we're getting kind of close to the end of the hour here, but it feels like from a civilian perspective, a non-Hollywooder, a basement dweller, it feels like a lot of sobriety or a lot of celebrities are getting sober, being public about it, talking about it. And so how is that received in the LA area where the entertainment business is, one of the number one reasons people live there?
I mean, I think it is. It's amazing that now people are talking about it beyond the sort of worst case addiction scenarios. Cause for so long, I feel like people were so belittling about it. Yeah. And so, people came out to talk about it if they had to go into a rehab and then it would be like paparazzi following them around and stuff. And now I think you have more people giving it up where they didn't have an extremely low bottom before their DUI. Like I always think like I caught it before I got a DUI because somehow I escaped it. And I'm like, so I'm not so famous that I would be in the news for it or anything. Although you never know. If you've been on TV, they could catch you.
Don't want that.
But yeah, the fact that people are there. And Kate Siegel, who was on our podcast, she's in a lot of horror movies and stars in, The Fall of the House of Usher. She was saying she actually went to like an Entertainment Weekly party. I bring that up because she was just talking about it. She went and she's like, what happens is people all get their drinks and then you look around the room and you see the sober people and you all make eye contact with each other. And she's like, and some of them, they're some of the most influential people there and you have something in common and maybe you end up connecting with them. But there's every event we go to, there are plenty of people, even people who are not sober, who just don't drink because it's a work event. So a lot of the most professional, best actors I know do not drink at those events anyway, because they treat it responsibly, where I used to be like, so now I look forward to going to more of those things and connecting. But it's definitely not as hard as I think in, places where it's more looked down upon to be sober.
Yeah, I love that you said that about like now more people are talking about living a sober life and they didn't show up in the news with 4 DUIs and drove into a building. And, it's actually becoming cool where people are recognizing that they not only should they stop, but that it's probably going to be awesome if they don't drink. It's probably going to be an improvement and a life hack and their superpower.
Totally.
Right? It really,
my life isn't perfect, but it's definitely better.
It's a superpower for sure.
And I think
I'm curious. Oh, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, say like that gray area that like it's not this. One of the things preventing me from actually quitting was that I didn't have that bottom. Like I didn't get the DUI. I didn't blow up my marriage. And so I didn't think I had a problem. And I think that it's important for people to hear that there are different stories. So the more stories everyone shares, it's better for people because you can see yourself in the story, you know? So I think that's really important for people. You can quit anytime. Is it good? Is it net good or net bad for you? And that can guide you to whether you quit or not.
Yeah. I love that.
I love that you're talking about stories because that segues into my next question. As someone who's been consuming not just the books and the podcast and the Instagram accounts, but I have been consuming movies and TV shows that have addiction, mental health, recovery as part of the main storyline. We're starting to see a little bit of a shift in Hollywood where shows are coming out. Like if you've seen Single Drunk Female, that kind of chronicles a girl who gets sober at 26, and the first 2 seasons, you know, kind of talk about her 1 year of sobriety. And while her story is of course definitely interesting to me and all the people that played in that show, what the personality or the character that stood out in that show to me was actually her sponsor, the woman that had 10 years sober. Like as someone in long-term recovery, I want to see characters that have 5 years sober, 10 years sober, 15 years sober. And that's part of the storyline. I don't need to see any more hit bottom treatment centers. I mean, I'll still watch them. Let's be clear. I'll still watch them. And I'm not anti-treatment center. I went to one, but I want to see more of that. So do you guys have the same appetite that I have?
Oh,
I feel like that's as writers, it's interesting to think about how to show a character as having fun or how to show a character as being reckless without including alcohol. And I think, you know, so much of what is shown in stories in Hollywood is someone's transition, right? From one part of their life to another. So that's why the huge transition that you go through from being an addict to in recovery, that's going to be the part they show. But it's such an interesting thought that like people have transitions in all parts of their life, and sobriety might just be one facet of their life. If they're 10 years sober, what's a different transition? And they also just happen to be someone who's a sponsor, you know, and I think it has to just be more people on the creative side having those experiences and then being able to share that with the world. But yeah, I definitely have an appetite for more people that are like us, that are not in dire straits with it.
Yeah. And see the people that like, you know, seemingly have their shit together, but are losing it on the outside. Because I don't think anyone looked at Rebekka and I and said that we weren't doing okay. We made it to work on time. We never smelled like alcohol. Like we brushed our teeth. We're not animals. But like they didn't think that we were these, you know, problems, but like we were fucking crumbling inside. So to see kind of that nuance of a lot of the people that I know where alcohol isn't serving them, seeing that would be great. What's
next for you guys on the podcast? What's in the future for non-drinking buddies?
Yeah, we want to interview more people. Hopefully we want to reach some like higher profile guests that people that are more household names, because I think it is inspiring to see them in a human way. And that we're continuing to record and then eventually looking to, you know, get a bigger audience so that we can get some sort of sponsor so that we're not paying for it on our own. Because that's what we're doing right now. But in addition to that, Anne and I have a lot of writing projects. And so we're going to try to continue to use these themes in our comedy writing in addition to doing the podcast. And soon we're going to want to do a live recording in front of a audience at the comedy theater we perform at, which will be a fun sort of full circle thing.
Well, obviously, Kate and I are available to come and sit in the audience, just to keep you comfortable and feeling in front of friends. Who is, for each of you, like, who is the big get? like, because we made a video earlier, in the spring of 2023, we all dressed up like different Drew Barrymore characters of all the movies she's been in,
yes.
and sent her a video trying to get her to be a curator for a day. And she hasn't said no yet. I just send them the video every month. They haven't gotten a restraining order. So I'm just like, eventually it's going to happen. So like, she's my big get, but like, who's your big get? Like, if you can get them on the show, you're like, we've arrived.
Oh my God. Well, Drew would be great, but I would love Harry Potter. I mean, for my kids. Daniel Radcliffe. Come on.
Harry Potter. Nobody loves sober Harry Potter. That's
Hot.
great.
Yeah, well, and
I'm revealing
since we're just going to use their character names.
Yeah. Just
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Tom Holland is like, yeah, Tom Holland, I saw him on the Daily J, I think, or, his podcast talking about his sobriety. And I was like, wow, he's so young and has so much wisdom about it. And Chrissy Teigen, getting people like that. I think ultimately, though, for us, I don't know. I think it's important to have high profile people because obviously that's how you get the reach. Mm-hmm. But, for us, it's just interesting talking to all different comedians and people in the community that we're in and getting all their stories and finding the similarities.
Yeah, that exactly. Like every time we talk to anyone, we learn something new, Mm-hmm. And because we're new in this journey, we're only a little over a year. So we get some piece of information that is invaluable every time. So from a selfish standpoint, I like listening to people's stories and taking a little bit from them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that you guys position yourselves as you're curious. You don't try to come on as experts. You're gaining from other stories. You're really just building community and awareness. And I think that's incredible.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Plus, you were brave enough to wear granny panties on Instagram. Like, come on. Like, I bow down.
Sober.
By the way, so
sober.
So we did that in a show, and we were supposed to do it for one little bit because it was period panties that don't work. We do this fake corporate show, and so we were like delusional CEOs, and we had these like period panties. And then we got such a laugh, and we're such whores for laughter that we wore the period panties for the entire show. Nobody wanted it. Then we took it to Edinburgh and put our great cellulite in everyone's faces and all those Scottish faces for a full month. So,
they loved it. They ate it up.
For a laugh,
they ate it up.
So do you have a granny panty line coming out soon?
We should.
Non-drinking panties. I would get
non-drinking panties. It's a great idea. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you start that line, we'll feature it in the fashion column and the shopping column of the Sober Curator. So we got you. We got you.
Thank you.
Goals. Thank you.
Well, this has been lovely. Thank you guys so much for joining us today as part of the Sober Spotlight interview for the Sober Curator. Where can people find you?
They can find us on Instagram at Non-Drinking Buddies. And you can check out our podcast on all podcast platforms and individually at Hello Rebekka and at Anne E. Greg.
Anne E. Greg. And we're also on YouTube at Non-Drinking Buddies. Yes.
Fantastic. So you're basically everywhere.
Yeah.
We are.
Except not Costco yet. Not Costco yet.
I go to Costco, baby. The Kirklands, oh my God. They have this pesto that is to die for. I'm a dork.
Kate or Rebekka, do either of you have a favorite Costco get? I mean, since we're on the subject.
I'm not a Costco member.
Oh.
So I just look outside through the window and just weep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's me. I'm not a Costco member. I don't buy anything in bulk. I like to go to the store every day. I'm like a compulsive shopper, so I go buy one item.
Yeah, it's fun to do it that way.
Okay, that's like very French or European. You're just very.
That's what I tell myself.
You're classy.
You're classy
and disorganized as fuck.
How about you, Alysse? Do you have a favorite Costco item, Alysse?
I don't like going to Costco because It's overwhelming to me. I have a best friend, Libby. She loves going to Costco. She should really start a business on just going to Costco for other people that don't like going to Costco.
Oh, yeah.
She loves it. But I too do not, as a single woman with one adult son who he only leaves his room to go to work and then he's back in front of his video games. He got stuck in the pandemic. There's just buying in bulk doesn't make sense for us. So yeah. Plus like the whole cooking thing, like it's just not me. I have a kitchen. It came with the place. I don't use it.
That's fine. But
I like buying
papers.
Sparkling seltzer in bulk or the hint waters in bulk. Like that's kind of my jam. I'll do that for sure.
Oh yeah. I love
it. And when you said, Rebekka, that you're so good. And did you guys have a favorite drink, a non-alcoholic drink that you like?
I like a phony Negroni. Have you heard of that?
I have tried the phony Negroni.
Because I used to like Negronis. So I like a phony Negroni. I put it over ice. I'll even squeeze a little orange into it and a splash of seltzer. And I find that to be quite refreshing.
Okay. Anne, what about you?
I'm a Milwaukee girl, Wisconsin to the core. So I will do an NA beer, like when I'm really wanting.
She just drinks melted cheese.
Melted cheese. Got it.
On a few pounds, but it's been great for my skin. No, I don't drink cheese.
She drinks non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah, and I drink.
Do you have a brand that you like the most?
You know what?
And do you have a brand you like the most?
I like Athletic. Yeah, Athletic. I'm going to say Athletic. That's my final answer.
Well, fun fact. We have reviewed, and by we, I mean our Sober Curator, Justin, has reviewed over 100 NA craft beers.
Ooh.
So if you are curious about any of the other brands out there, he's probably sipped them and done a video about them. And then Rebekka, I know you talked about margaritas, and I just recently tried the Sorbet by it's the Real Housewife of New Jersey. Margaret and Lexi started this company called Sorbet, and they have a margarita and delicious. It's only 45 calories in a can, so it's not like you're drinking straight sugar. Delicious. I love
that.
Highly recommend.
That's great. And honestly, Real Housewives of New Jersey is like Jersey is next door to where I grew up in Staten Island, so that's a stamp of approval for me.
Yeah, you might have her on. You guys might think about having.
That would be amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, this has been lovely. I'm sure our paths will continue to cross as we all forge ahead in this global sober domination.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.